Have you ever felt?
Are you listening? Damn.
Well, that's enough of that. Hope I'm in the shot for all of this. So as you can probably tell, I decided to get another project car. Keyword's another, as some would say too many. Anyway, point being, this car is a 2005 Saab 92X Linear, and from certain angles you could be mistaken for thinking it's another car, but more on that later. I've never actually pictured myself owning a Saab. Don't get me wrong, I think they're awesome cars, and they were really ahead of their time before GM killed them, but they just weren't my cup of tea. But this one is, and that's because it's not really a Saab actually. It's this interesting amalgamation between Subaru, Saab, and GM. Long story short is that GM owned 20% of Subaru and 100% of Saab. Saab did some market research and decided, hey, we need to get an all-wheel drive wagon for our low-end luxury vehicle. It's going to help our sales. They ask Big Daddy GM. He's like, no, I'm not giving you the R&D money and waiting 5 years for a car. In fact, let's just go over to this other company that we own 20% of, Fuji Heavy Industries. Now, Fuji Heavy Industries has a very tried and true all-wheel drive wagon, or all-wheel drive platform, shall we say, and to an extension, an amazing all-wheel drive wagon. And that is the Subaru Impreza. Wagon. Count how many times I say wagon and take a shot. Don't do it if you're under 21. It was a lot cheaper for them just to share the platform of this car than build a whole nother vehicle. So, thus, the Saab 92X was born. Now, a lot of people will say the 92X is just a WRX with some badging differences, and for some of them that is true. However, that is not true for my 92X. My 92X is a Linear. Now, the thing with the Linear in particular is it's basically the NA 2.5 liter with a 5-speed manual transmission with the all-wheel drive system. That makes this pretty much an RS. And don't get me wrong, I love the RS. It's the only car I could afford, which is why I ended up getting this one. Now, as to why I bought this car, I've wanted a Subaru for a long time, but anyone who's ever trolled Craigslist will know that Subarus have a bit of a premium markup on them. I think part of it is because, you know, it's a Subaru. Everyone wants a Subaru. And they're all-wheel drive. It's not like buying a Mitsubishi Lancer where all the base models are front-wheel drive. Every Subaru you can find past a certain model year is all-wheel drive. And that means any one of them could be a decent rally car build. And because of that brings up their value quite a bit. So I was looking, and the average Impreza runs about maybe $3,000 on the cheapest, most speed up, like danked up car ever, to, hello guys on bicycles, to about $6,000-7,000, which is totally out of my price range, right? So I'm on my lunch break scrolling through Craigslist without any of the filters on, and I see this car on Craigslist for about $1,800, right? At first, I couldn't really believe it, right? Because it's a Subaru, pretty much, and $1,800 is a steal in my mind. I mean, you go look up 2005 Subaru Impreza wagon, and you're not going to find anything for $1,800. So, while on my lunch break, I called the owner. I was super pumped to get it. I was like, hey man, I'll come by whenever you can, and I'll give you the money and I'll buy the car. Owner's like, yeah, just come on by when you can. I'm like, sweet. And right after I hang up the phone, I check my bank account, right? I had thought I had $1,800. I didn't. I only had $1,400. I'm thinking that there's no way that the owner would discount this car $400 and give it to me, right? So I call him back. I say, hey dude, I'm sorry, I only have $1,400. I can understand if you don't want to sell it to me. He's like, no, it's all cool, it's OBO. I'm like, yes! I was excited at that point. As for the actual purchasing of the car, I did everything my dad said not to do. I went to go see this car at night. I went to go see this car in a Walmart parking lot. It might not sound too sketchy to you guys, but that's little, Porsche Is that a 928? It's a 928. Wow. Anyway, so I went to go see this car around 6 or 7 o'clock at night. One of my friends, Anthony, also known as ABB Music, gave me a ride to buy the car. So we look at it, test drive it. Guy says, hey, this what's wrong with it. It's got a bad wheel bearing. The rear hatch doesn't work. It's got a big ass dent in the rear quarter panel on the driver's side. It's just these little things, right? Things that I'm not too worried about. And he says, yeah, it's $1,400. He handed me this whole book full of owner's history. It's got new tires on it. I bought it right then and there. So within 2 days, I picked up a Subaru Impreza pretty much for $1,400 on Craigslist. And then I had to register it and get insurance for it, which was not as hard as I thought it would be. Now, a couple little things I'm a little worried about is the fact that this car does have a Minnesota sticker on it from the last owner. And I don't know much about Minnesota, but I do know they're rusty as fuck, and this car does not handle rust very well. So I'm a little worried about that. There are some rust spots on the vehicle, and if you look underneath, a lot of the bolts and stuff are rusted. But I'm a little worried about it, but it wasn't enough to stop me from buying the car. It's also got a cracked windshield, but I'm not too worried about that. And I'm probably not going to replace it, because more than likely what I'm going to be doing is going to cause that windshield to crack a lot more. Because me. Now, there's just something really cool about having a 5-speed manual, all-wheel drive wagon. It's a car that's a lot of stuff you don't see very often, right? Especially in the US market. I think like 10% of cars that are sold have a manual transmission here. Almost none of them are wagons. It's just a cool little car. It's a cool, unusual, fun car to have. I'm really happy I have it. So as to what I'm going to be doing with this car, I'm not too sure yet. I kind of want to build it into a rally car, but on the other hand, my insurance won't cover it if I do use it in any competitions. So that's probably going to be out the question. But I'm probably just going to build it to be a rally car and use it for my personal fun time and never actually compete with it. You know, because insurance is expensive and I got a pretty good deal on mine. Anyway, this car overall runs incredibly mint, right? After I bought it, I did take it to a dealership, the actual Subaru dealership, and actually one of the service techs knew what it was right away. I had just finished showing this car off to another guy who told me it's not a Subaru, and then I lifted up the engine, showed him the Boxer motor, showed him the Impreza interior and everything, and he's like, oh, okay. There's something I've always wanted about this car, you know? It just makes me smile. And I guess that's all you can really ask from a car, is that it makes you smile and you enjoy driving it, you know? Now, there are a couple little problems with it. One, the Saab badges on this car are pretty much toasted. It looks like the Saab badges are probably the lowest quality thing on this car. There's some weird noise coming from under the hood whenever I turn the blower motor on. A little worried about that, but again, not something to have an anxiety attack over. Headlights are fogged up. One of them works. I have the bulbs in the back. I'll probably swap those out tonight. But other than that, it's a pretty solid car. I also took this car off-roading. Not off-roading like, you know, a rock crawler kind of thing, but some light off-roading. I went down some pretty steep hills. It might not look too steep in the video, but it's quite a bit. Climbed up some steep little hills. Went over a little pitted gravel road. I did some kind of offset driving kind of thing. I don't even know what that was called, but it was like a wiggly woggly thingy. Kind of wiggly woggly. And despite despite being so low to the ground, this car does have some pretty impressive off-road capability. Nope, bad idea. I'd say this is as far as we want to go, right? At least without some skid plates. Because, what? There's the mark right there from us. There. So let's go back now. I mean, I was able to go off-roading in a car that had air conditioning, that had enough room for my dogs, that was pretty reliable with four-wheel drive for less than $1,500. Literally $1,400 for this car. And I was able to do all that stuff. I mean, that's pretty awesome. It's a pretty hard deal to beat. I was even able to take it on some high-speed off-roading. It almost looked like a rally stage there for a minute in my mind, but I've got this weird fetish with Colin McRae. I should slow down, shouldn't I? Holy shit. What? There's like a big ass ravine outside.
Yeah, I can only get like a bit of it.
It's all good. I mean, I was able to do some pretty brisk off-road driving, take a couple bumps at speed, and this car handled it like a champ. Again, I am super excited to be building this car up. I mean, it's a car that I can take light off-roading, I can take my dogs in and my friends and still have some room left over, which is something I just don't have with my other cars. As you know, my daily driver is a Nissan Leaf, and I love that car. I love the electric drivetrain and everything, but there's just something to be said about not having to be limited to a battery. I mean, granted, I do think electric cars are the future, and it's actually pretty good on gas, considering I'm used to a van that gets maybe 10 miles to the gallon and a truck that gets 11.5 or 11.7 or whatever it is at now. Now, for the future of this car, I do have quite a few mods I want to do. One thing, I definitely want to lift this car. There's no question about it. It's getting lifted. I just don't know how I'm going to lift it, but I'm going to lift it. I might put some spacers on top of the current struts. I might get the struts off a Forester or something, but I do plan on lifting it. I want to put some LED lights on it, like a flush mounted LED light bar into the front bumper, but one of those larger curved ones. I also want to get a roof rack and a roof thingy for it, and fix all the shit that's wrong with it, which is quite a bit of a list. Like I said, the rear hatch isn't open and all that other stuff. There is a big ass factory in the middle of Red Rock. I did not know that. Oh, and I definitely want to put a louder exhaust on this thing. I love the sound a flat 4 makes, but this current exhaust system is just so restrictive. So, if you want to see more of the DIY rally car that might never be a rally car, but maybe if I get a different insurance company, hit subscribe. If you like this video, hit like. And if you have any suggestions of what you want me to do this car, if you just want to say I'm a dumbass for buying it, if you want to do whatever you want to do, just hit the comment section down below. Depending on what your comment is, I might or might not read it. But hey, at least you got to say your piece.